QED2 switchboard. Some of the main characteristics, some of the important characteristics are the nameplate, which is going to have all your information, your amperage, your voltage. Importantly, it's going to have your square D build number. And that's if there's ever any kind of service information or anything that's needed for it. If you have to call Square D or call someone, that's the number that you would need. Basically, this is taking the main power and distributing it to all the other panels in the facility. I mean, there's not much to know about the switchboard. I don't know how deep you guys get into it. I know the next section we'll look at the breakers real quick. Should I just move into the breakers or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, you have your main breaker, which is a pump action to turn it on and off. Basically very simple. Shut it down. If it ever trips, it's going to be in the mid position. From the mid position, you'd have to shut it all the way off, turn it all the way back on, and that's how you would operate that breaker. Moving into the smaller breakers, pretty much basic same scenario. Trip is in the middle. If you want to disconnect the power, you have to turn it all the way to the right. Some of the breakers in this panel have trip settings, which have been set to the coordination study. So I don't think you guys would have to adjust those. So basically, that's really all you really need to know about turning on and off breakers and the trip functions.
There is no maintenance, anything like that, right?
Do maintenance? I mean, maintenance. I don't. Only maintenance. Circuit breakers really don't need maintenance. The only thing you really have to worry about on the breaker is the torque of the lugs, and usually you use an IR heat detector. If you're doing your annual once a year maintenance, you would check all the lugs, all the things, and you look for your hot spots, because 90% of the times if something is going to burn out, it's where the hot spot is. So torquing these to the right foot-pounds is the most important maintenance item on a switchboard and circuit breakers. I mean, breakers are pretty much maintenance free. Any questions? One major thing with these boards, we have arc flash labels, which everybody knows you shouldn't open the board without the proper equipment, the protection equipment. But everything is labeled. Proper equipment must be needed to open these live. I mean, it's always recommended to do it dead if you're going to do any kind of work in here, but that doesn't happen all the time. So that's basically it. This is a Square D Eyeline Panel board. Pretty much same basic, little different construction, but same basic idea of load distribution. You have your main coming in, and you have your distribution breakers that are feeding out to your downstream sources. Little different construction than a switchboard. This has front to back busing, and the breakers mount actually plug into the side of this panel. So it's just a little different when you open it up. There's one screw that holds the breakers in place. So basically you have your nameplate, once again, that shows your amperage, voltage, and your square D number, which is one of the most important things for maintenance and for replacement parts. Also, you have your arc flash label, which tells you your protective equipment that must be worn if you're going to open this board and do any work inside live. Moving to the circuit breakers. This circuit breaker, I don't know if you can see, it has an adjustable trip, and there's also a meter reading on here, which shows you could do your amps per phase, your volts per phase, your peak, high amperage, and it's just a menu button and a scroll button that'll take you through all of the different, not settings, but all the different visual cues that are there. Once again, these are the same breakers. If in a trip situation, it's going to pop to the center, has to be turned all the way off, and then turned back on. just to get a better view, these are the trip settings for your long peak and your short circuit duration. These have been set to the arc flash coordination study. So that usually doesn't have to be touched. And that's about it on an Eyeline panel. This is the main switchgear metering equipment, which I believe was covered when we did the switchboard switchgear training. So this is just basically your amperage, your voltage. You can go through all your settings. I think it was covered a little bit more in depth when we did the entire training on the whole switchgear. This is square D safety switch. Basically, it's used to disconnect the load or protect the load moving forward by means of fuses. It can come in either fused or unfused. Yeah, this is the handle that would turn it on and off. Down would be off, up would be open. Pretty much it's a maintenance-free thing. Probably maintenance should be done once a year. Turn it on and off just to keep it exercised. In case the fuse blows, which would be a dead short, blow out the line, you'd have to pop the fuses out, disconnect the power, pop the fuses out, put in new fuses, and then we just double check for the short before you turn it back on. This is a square D NQ panel board. Pretty much load distribution. Could be main lug, main breaker. This one happens to be a main lug. So the main feed's coming in, distribute the power to the circuits in the building. Circuit breaker operation, once again, on position all the way to the right. Trip would be in the middle. Off would be to your left. You would actually see them. And actually on the square Ds, you would actually see if trip position, you would see an orange in the window, which would show which breaker is tripped.
Is that orange or red?
Orange.
Oh, okay.
I think it's orange.
I was just...
And that's pretty much, you also have your nameplate, which shows your amperage and voltage, and your arc flash information, and that's about it.